We're independent on our own in our homes with our families, but we want to find ways to stay as connected as possible, to stay as engaged as possible, to be a community. And so I started doing these little teachings just to figure a way to begin connected, just as we conclude on Shabbat Connected. And what was really beautiful is that my friend Dan Nichols joined me last week. And then from there, realized it would be nice to bring some special people who are part of my life into your lives, or maybe their platforms will share me with their people too, if that makes sense. So this morning, a special person. It's like preschool. So it's preschool, it's special person day. My special person today is Rabbi Stephen Hennison Moskowitz, my older brother, who is a rabbi in New York on Long Island at Congregation Lador Vador. And he has been a rabbi to me as well, as he was ordained in 1991. So nice. Don't interrupt me, Steve, when I'm saying nice things, but the opportunity for us to teach together. And he and I have been talking, well, pretty much every day, not just through this pandemic, but most of the time, and sort of navigating this together, and thought it would be really nice to do some teaching together. So with that in mind, I'll let my brother introduce himself and say some nice things now, if he wants, or not.
Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to talk. I was supposed to talk now.
You can say anything you want, Steve.
Well, I love the fireplace chat thing. That's really nice. That's good.
Got that from FDR.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's a nice thematic approach. So it's great to be here and to join you. First of all, Mike and I, we talk just about every day, I think, and regardless of the situation in the world, and we're always bouncing ideas off of each other. So we thought, hey, this would be a great opportunity to share some things with you. And so I love hearing from Mike, and I love learning from Mike as well. And so let's get right into it, don't you think?
I think so. Thank you. So one thing our congregations don't realize, that when we refer to Rabbi Moskowitz in the third person in our teachings, we're often teaching from the other one, maybe sometimes. But the idea is that we do teach each other and share with each other. And we thought we wanted to delve into prayer this morning. Last week, I talked about Moda Ani and how that's been a meaningful prayer for me. But I wanted to sort of challenge my brother with something we often talk about, and the idea of how prayer is effective or how it's not, and the difficulties we both find at times with prayer, but also how it helps. I think sometimes our congregants assume that it is something that we know how to do perfectly, and that we're always doing, and reflective and thoughtful. But the honest answer for me, is that it's something that is difficult and challenging. And but I think we're blessed because we have a lot of different avenues to take in the ways that we can pray as Jews. So I'm going to ask my brother that question. How do you, in general, find prayer as something, as a leader in the congregation? Is it something that works naturally for you, or something that you have to work at as well?
I think the biggest challenge, so we've talked about this often, but the biggest challenge of prayer is that it becomes too habitual. So, I mean, most rabbis can, tell you every page in the prayer book that certain prayers are on, because we recite those so often. And many of the prayers we can cite from memory because we've said them so often and so frequently. So the biggest challenge for prayer is that you stop thinking about the words, and you're thinking about, like, especially when you're leading prayer, you're thinking about what the next prayer is, or the next reading you're going to do, or not that I would ever do this. You haven't really fully thought out your sermon, and you're thinking about the sermon that you're going to give in a few minutes, and you sort of lose the focus of the prayer, and you sort of leave that prayer moment. So the fact that it can be so habitual, and you could just be sort of going through the motions and not focusing on the words, is one of the biggest challenges, especially for those of us who do it professionally.
I would say it's also that choreography aspect to leading prayer. I'm always thinking about what's coming next, and making sure that the the services working together. And part of it, and Judaism is taught for us that there's like three ways we pray: the dramaturgy, the drama of what we're doing; the historaturgy, the
Yes, word.
history that's in the prayer itself; and the liturgy, which is the literature, the words, that are there. Obviously, we always look at liturgy as the essence of it, but those other components, I think, are so important for us, and that drama of it really means something. I was going to piggyback on something you were saying, Steve. Though one of the strangest things I think is that people see us as the transmitter of prayers at times, or asking us, and it's an awkward thing. It's in Judaism, we're no closer, to spiritual, to God, than anyone else, and anyone can offer prayers. We don't have priests anymore, as other traditions may have today, and so anyone can offer those. But I think appreciate the fact that we know the prayers and want us to do them. But at times, I'm sure you have stories too, awkward when people say, "Oh, pray for me," and ask us to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we also have, a difficult relationship to the words. We don't want to be the prayer for someone else. We want them to own that themselves and to pray for themselves, and and certainly not to be seen as the intermediary or the better prayer. Like if you pray for us, then it's like somehow a better prayer. I do want to help people and certainly support them, but it is an overwhelming feeling and sense of responsibility. But going back, to the words and the habit piece, sometimes it's cool to be like just lost in prayer and just be singing the melody and forget like that you're even singing a melody and singing a prayer. And that's sort of part of prayer. Are you laughing about my singing?
Not going to say anything. Right. Well, that's the kavanah of it, right? That when you're lifted up into those moments, which are awesome, that you feel, right? And the intensity of that. I love, a friend shared with me once this idea that he had learned from his teacher, that every prayer at some point was an innovation.
Right.
Right. And the idea that some people feel, oh, they're so machmir, so strict, it has to be done this way. But I believe that we always can be innovating and evolving. And so that just because we've always said a prayer doesn't mean we have to always say it that way. Yeah, we have the fixed parts that we're expecting, that ritual, but there's new opportunities. And that's something you taught me actually with poetry. Steve and I were talking about what would be fun to talk about today. And I thought maybe we talk about poetry, and that might be a future thing that we discuss, because Stephen is always engaged in poetry, loves poetry more than me, much more than me, shares poems with me all the time, with his congregation all the time. And it's interesting because some of those have become prayers, right? That we may look into for meditation, or that we share. And is that liturgy part of it that is important, I think.
No, I think so many of the prayers are poems, or certainly were poems. And what you said, one generation's kavanah is the next generation's keva. Is one generation's spontaneous prayer and inspirational prayer becomes fixed. One of the challenges though is, we right now have a very, very fixed prayer. Like, yeah, you have to have a prayer book. And so it's, you have to do this prayer first. You have to do this prayer second. You have to do it in this exact order. In the morning, you say this. In the evening, you say that. And sometimes we become too dependent on the script. Like there's this sort of like, okay, and that's, I think, part of why people see us as the sort of exemplar, because we know the script and we've learned the script. And so there's a sense that, well, I can't really pray as well because I'm not as familiar with the order and the structure. And I wish people felt more liberated to just sort of offer their prayers
Yeah.
and say their prayers, and not worry so much about, the given script.
we That's why I like meditation. I think, and why we try to infuse that into all of our services, especially our the Come As You Are Friday night services that we do. That when we're together, we make them as casual, sometimes outside when the weather lets us, but we don't use a prayer book. Sometimes we may have a prayer card. Now online, we're saying, okay, we're on this prayer page if you want to follow, but Cantor will just sing a nigun and we'll meditate with that nigun. And for me, those are the most spiritual, uplifting, reflective times,
But
right?
see, yeah, but part of the challenge is like, I mean, I love that, and I love the creativity and the innovation, but what makes something feel like an authentic, Jewish prayer experience? And so if you completely let go of the script, then it loses its, rootedness, and loses the sense of, Jewish authenticity. I mean, I think part of it, Hebrew can just help, like if it's in
Yeah.
Hebrew, even if it's not part of the traditional prayer, that does for American Jews often elevate it to feeling more authentic and more Jewish. But that's the challenge. Like, we do have a script, and that is what makes it Jewish.
I mean, think about 30 years ago, for you, 34 years ago, when we lived in Israel and you'd go to Kol Neshama for services, right? And I didn't know what was going on. So this is a Reformed synagogue in Jerusalem where it's mostly in Hebrew, but it's all nigunim. It's all just singing. And then suddenly you'll hear them chanting the Avot V'imahot, right? And so you find that which is what you're familiar with, but it was the idea of these nigunim with guided meditations that I still resonates with me, and I love to take that piece of my learning and experience and bring it out.
And do you think that just to challenge you a little bit, like if you said, like, what was sort of my best prayer experience? I've often thought about this. More often than not, it's camp or Israel. It's someplace outside. It's so interesting. It's outside of the sanctuary and in a place other than where I regularly do prayer. And I've
Oh
been
yeah.
wondering about, like, why does it not just like, well, it was, Saturday, in 2018, it was not just a regular Shabbat. It was someplace where I was, transported to some other place, and why is that? Why are those sort of the peak prayer experiences that we would look back to?
I would say for me, often, well, camp definitely, and so there's the music piece and the community piece. So music matters so much. It's the idea of the
Absolutely.
things we sing together at camp, and the way we do that, and how everyone is participating in it is so. Think of the Shechianu at the end of Shabbat camp on Friday night, and how everyone is engaged in that, and how special that is. Or it's nature. It's something that is an awesome natural moment. Sunrise on Masada. I'm not someone who davens morning minyan, but leading a minyan, a morning minyan, as you've hiked up Masada at 5 in the morning, literally as you see the sun coming up, is this miraculous, awesome moment of the aha moment that Heschel would talk about. And sometimes it's the people I'm with too. Special moments in my life that we've shared something together, my family, or I can think of one time the Kotel in Jerusalem. Never, rarely is that.
I think
But
actually never, but okay, go ahead.
I can think of two moments when it was for me. One, though, was when I was leading the first teen mission in 1996. And we were in the back of the Kotel Plaza, wanted to do an evening, it was Kabbalat Shabbat service. And one of my staff, my female counselor who is Orthodox from Efrat. And so she was always challenging me as a Reform rabbi, an Orthodox woman, but becoming more progressive in her own thinking. And so this is the last Shabbat of the summer. And so I wanted to do this in the back of the Kotel Plaza. I thought maybe we could get away with it back there. The police came over to us right away, tried to break it up. And so I went to turn and talk to the police. And she said to me in Hebrew, "Rabbi, I got it covered. Don't worry." And she went and distracted the police as we had this awesome 5 minutes of prayer as a community. And for me, it was it was this rebellion kind of experience too, but it was just very special that someone Orthodox appreciated what we were doing, and it resonated with her too. And she wanted to validate us in that way.
I know we're running out of time, so we might have to continue this, but one of the things to reflect on in that experience, yeah, it often happens to us that we run out of time. The you know, Part of why the Kotel has not been a positive prayer experience is because there's someone telling me what to do and someone telling me where to stand. And more importantly, I can't stand with my wife, Susie, or my daughter, Shira, at the Western Wall, and someone imposing that. And so I just worry so that means that prayer needs to be in some ways liberated from outside structures and outside rules in order to be, that freeing prayer experience. So I worry, like we're always standing up there and say, stand up, sit down, page 20, read responsively. How much of that is that too much of an imposition in terms of providing people with a freeing experience of prayer?
Interesting. It's funny because in these 8 weeks of staying at home and leading services in this way, I have said during our services, if you want to stand, great. If you want to stay seated on your couch, if you want to be having a glass of wine during services, you're with us. We're together in this, and that's what's making it work. And I think the comfort and the freedom people are feeling is very validating, and they're saying they're having more of a prayer experience right now. And so the question is, how do we take that from here into our lives after this time of our sheltering in place?
Yeah, but the other piece about it is people need prayer far more now. There's a sense of crisis and a sense of hurt and a sense of tremendous anxiety. So that's people are really holding on to the prayer, and the gathering, even though it's virtually, is much more needed, because it's like the only time in the week you might see other people. And so that's a very, very powerful and important experience.
I'd say the prayer then reminds us we're not alone, right? And so the idea for us as Jews, certain prayers we say together, we're in this together, we're not alone. And I think prayer also is for us about having hope, right? That embedded in all our prayers, whether it's a Mishaberach, a prayer of healing, or a prayer of peace, or a prayer of thanksgiving, is appreciation in a sense to lift us to hope, right? And for me, that Heschel line from his essay, Moral Grandeur and Spiritual Audacity. You may have shared this with me, Stephen. I'm not sure. But prayer might not save us, but prayer might just make us worth saving. Awesome. Prayer might make us worthy of saving, right? And so the idea is that we're not being saved because I said this prayer correctly, but it helps me think about what really we value and what matters and what is the priorities that we need to have in our lives. As you said in your Torah commentary last week, the idea of all these descriptions of our holidays, but the Sukkot one about that leave the corners of your field unharvested, the idea that the ritual and the prayer is to remind us of what we have to be doing for other people, that prayer makes us worthy of being saved. So, well, I promise this will be, short teachings, idea of perspective to begin our week. And that's what we've done. And we've gone a little longer than anticipated because Stephen and I love talking to each other, at least. And you got to be a part of that conversation this morning. A few Shir Shalom announcements, and then I'll let some Lador Vador announcements, Steve, if you want to. Okay. Next Monday morning, on Monday Morning Musings with Rabbi Michael Moskowitz, my guest next to me will be the ultra-Orthodox Rabbi Mike Moskowitz, the foremost advocate in the LGBTQ plus community, especially coming from his perspective, his community. Very interested and excited to be having a conversation and studying with him next Monday. Tomorrow at noon, I think, Stephen, is your class tomorrow at noon as well?
Tomorrow.
Okay, good. Balance between both. At noon at Temple Shir Shalom, Rabbi Daniel and Benny, our guide in Israel, are doing the virtual tour of Israel. We'll be doing the Temple Mount in Jerusalem tomorrow with Benny and his drone. They're live sharing with us. If you want the Zoom link, you can shoot me a message. And Stephen's learning tomorrow is?
At 1:00 on Zoom. Lunch and Learn, Parshat Shavua, Torah portion of the week.
Excellent. And tomorrow night is Judaism 202, that class with me at 7 o'clock for those who are registered. If you're interested, shoot me a message. I'll tell you more about that. And Wednesday night is trivia night at Temple Shir Shalom. Games, prizes. Woo! It's going to be barroom trivia. Come in with a team and we'll have lots of fun. Hey, thank you everyone for being a part of this, for jumping on board, and tell us what you think. Give us ideas. I think Stephen and I will be doing more of this together because we have fun, and it's a great way to connect with you and with each other. So Boker Tov, make it a great day.
Boker